every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, welcome back to the Daily Palace podcast. It's the best day to be an Eagle since Croydon's ill-fated walk your rabbit to work day. Palace defeated Brighton 3-1 away at the Amex to claim their first M23 derby win in donkey's years. Palace went 2-0 up before half-time with goals from Chalobah and Ismaila Saar. Sarr added another at the 82nd minute before Gahey got overcome by the spirit of Christmas and charitably scored his second own goal at the end of the season to give the Seagulls something to celebrate. To discuss all of that with me today, we have Wale Bakari. How are you doing, Wale?
I'm very good, Joe. Great to be on the pod tonight. Hope you're fine as well. Just as you said, can't be a better time to be an Eagle. A great result against Brighton. I did say that the last time Palace got a victory against Brighton was away, and just maybe an away victory was on the cards. Although I wasn't so confident, but there was just part of me that felt it.
As well as alluded to, I realised I haven't introduced myself rudely. I'm Joe Lodge, hosting today. And yeah, you're right, Wale. I mean, it didn't feel like Palace were way low, I have to say. Based on the sounds watching it, sounded like it could have been at Selhurst from start to finish, really. I think, made a great atmosphere, and I'm sure that helped G the team on. So, tell me, Wale, what did Palace do so right in this game?
Well, first of all, I have to say kudos to the team because the intensity in the game was just was very, very high. Before now, you would find a part of the team giving it, say, 70-80%, and then there's just another part of the team letting the other part down. But in that game against Brighton, it did look like everyone got the message. Everyone were, acting from the same script, and the intensity was just very high. And Palace players were onto Brighton's players every moment they had the ball. There was barely, there were a couple of chances for Brighton as well. Some smart saves by Henderson in the game. One of them after he gave the ball away himself, but. It was the intensity. You could sense that Palace were dangerous from the onset. There was that, and I have to say that Olivier Glasner, made changes just when it was required, and that change of shape and at some point change of personnel also affected the game. Brighton were not. It wasn't like it was their worst game. They, created some chances. They had possession as always, but Palace were dangerous and on the front foot every time they had the ball. Ismaila Saar, did great. I'm quite sad that Eddie Nketiah couldn't bury the chance that he got, because that would have really helped him with his confidence. But it was just that you just could sense that Palace really meant business in that game against Brighton. They were aggressive when needed. Will Hughes again had a fantastic game. Even Daichi Kamada, you could see virtually everyone was just really switched on, and it did turn out to be too much for Brighton at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's spot on there, Wale. As you say, it wasn't. I kind of think the big difference between the two teams. There's lots of praise individually from Palace. Defended really well, attacked with purpose, in clinicality in a way we haven't seen too often this season, and you can see great relationships starting to form all over the pitch from players playing together more regularly. Sarr and Munoz particularly stood out in that capacity for me there. I think they interchange really well. But the big difference between the two sides in the game was sort of how they managed periods of stress and difficulty. I think Palace were really under the cosh for the first kind of 15-20 minutes. Brighton looked great, were creating chances, created a couple of chances. I mean, I think the defence did pretty well. but Palace were finding it really hard to play out through them. Every Palace player had a blue and white shadow basically, and really couldn't escape the intensity of the Brighton press. But they kept their heads, started trying to build up in slightly different ways. Particularly Eze, I think, noticed dropping deeper, going more central, offering an extra body of support in there, and yeah, just kept calm and played themselves back into the game. And then conversely, when that led to Palace winning and scoring from a corner with Chalobah, Brighton's heads completely dropped, and where there had been this amazing press, there was no structure or order at all. Palace could completely dominate the ball and play through them until half time. And to be fair, I think Brighton arguably were even lucky to only go in 2-0 down at half time with the way that half finished, and the amount of dominance that Palace were able to achieve. And same thing with the second half, really. I think Brighton started off more intense, a better team, looked really sharp. Players like Encetiah like they're making a difference. Palace changed things around. Glasner made a couple of good subs. I think Kamada and Nketiah affected the game positively. Definitely Kamada, particularly for Eze, changed the way Palace were defending with an extra body more deep in midfield and slightly smarter pressure on the likes of Belieber in that Brighton midfield. And again, when Palace re-established their control of the game, Brighton fell apart again and could have conceded a couple more goals. So I think it was all about managing the occasion. Palace did it tremendously, and Brighton really didn't at all. But which individual players stood out for you from a Palace perspective, Wale?
Well, of course, the best player on the pitch for Palace was Ismaila Sarr. Two well taken goals, particularly the second one when he beat Lewis Dunk to the ball, and he had a bit of time, and you hear a lot of attackers say to you that sometimes when there is a lot of time and space for the striker, it makes it a bit more difficult. He had Lewis Dunk bearing down on him, and it was face to face with the goalkeeper and controlled the ball well. Took a very one-time shot, fantastic placement, and it was a great goal for him. And overall, he could maybe have gotten another goal, in that game. His link-up play was good. I remember when Palace signed Ismaila Saar, I did say that is a talented individual. Is one of those on his day would get you the goals, but there would be so many games where you would be frustrated by him. But then there will be a lot of games where it would just be out of this world, and we were hopeful at the time that we would see more of those games where it would just be out of this world. But the game against Brighton over the weekend was one of such, and it was just great in the game. So Ismaila Sarr for me, was the best player on the pitch. Of course, the defensive setup considered a goal eventually. Unfortunately, don't go by Matt Gay, although maybe with better handling by Anderson, maybe that could have been avoided. There were a couple of chances created by Brighton, some of them off errors, and some of them some fantastic play, especially on the left-hand side by João Pedro and Mitoma and Melvis Estopinian. But overall, the defense did well as well. The trio of the defense, Trevor Chalobah got a goal. Fantastic. It was quick to react in the box, and I think that was his second goal in the league for Palace this season. So he's one that knows how to take his chances when he's in the box. So he had a great game as well. Maybe Tyrick Mitchell was one that had a good game as well. It wasn't, as I said, it wasn't a game where Brighton were entirely poor or they were blown away by Palace. They had some amazing performers as well on the pitch, but for Palace has to be Ismaila Sarr, Trevor Chalobah, Tyrick Mitchell. Those are the biggest picks for me. Will Hughes as always, it was just as we've seen. I shouldn't say as always, because I remember at the start of the season we had a lot to complain about Will Hughes, but in the last couple of weeks he does seem to have found his mojo again, and is as aggressive as ever. Is not one to bow down from a fight. Uh, I think it was the goal, the second goal for Ismaila Sarr. It was Will Hughes who, with that height, jumped over the Brighton midfielder and headed the ball forward. And Louis Dunk had a nightmare period, but he also had a great game. Yeah, it was a good game overall. In parts of the game, as you pointed out earlier, uh, Palace just found a way to manage different periods of the game. The period when they were under a lot of pressure, kept their head. Henderson made some great saves, but in other parts of the game, Brighton were almost always in trouble every time Palace attacked.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Completely agree. Well, exactly the same players I would have picked out there. I think Saar, as you say, is the obvious man of the match. Two really well taken goals, and I think we're seeing benefit of the kind of hopefully more stable environment that Palace can offer him, as opposed to Marseille and Watford, who are obviously kind of basket case clubs where he's been before. I also think that he deserves a lot of credit for just sheer composure in front of goal, because I think that's not something that we had historically associated with Ismaila Sarr, but that second goal in particular, he takes so calm and so well. He also made tons of defensive contributions in the match. He really
Yeah,
got back and did his work and doubled up as needed to with a player like Estepinian in, and then had the beating of him on the counter from that position. So I think he was the obvious standout. Mitchell, I love that cross. It's so unconventional. It's almost a miss hit, isn't it? It's not.
yeah,
That's the way he crosses them. They're not
yeah,
comfortable, but actually creates this loop that makes it this great dip that makes it impossible for the keeper to deal with. And against Sarr's the sharpest player in the box to read it. Obviously, Lewis Dunk stood out from a Palace perspective. Brilliant performance from him. Left lots of opportunities for him to exploit. And yeah, Hughes was great again. Tone setting, 5 tackles and tough tackles at that. They were ones that we do not let. We One of those. It's a derby. Nothing. We can't make anything easy for them. Kind of performances from Will Hughes, and I think that was important and useful. And yeah, Chalobah, I think that's probably his best game in a Palace shirt, at least that I've seen. He not only did he take his goal really well, but I think he was aggressive and good in the one-on-ones defensively. There's one moment in the first half, I can't remember exactly who. I think maybe it was Matoma tries a sharp little kind of Ronaldo chop type situation where he tries to pop it behind his leg and creates space to get a shot off, and Chalobah just reads it completely, and then the ball's breaking loose to maybe it's Estepinian on the kind of edge of the box, and Chalobah gets across to him so quickly, and his back's to him, kind of just shepherds him out of the box to defend him from just outside, and wins the ball back there. And it's just like, it's simple, but it's really, really good defending and really good understanding of how to play that funny position on the outside of back three, where you some of the kind of fullback type defensive jobs as well as those of a traditional centre back. I think he is a bit of a specialist in that role, and we really saw that specialism come to the fore today. But we'll leave it there and have a quick word from our sponsors before continuing our discussion of this glorious day for the Eagles. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. In the second half of the game, Wale, Eddie Nketiah came on for Jean-Philippe Mateta, who'd had a relatively quiet evening. Got himself an assist for the third goal. Looked lively. Did he do enough to challenge for a place in the starting 11?
Well, not necessarily, to be honest. You could almost see that is lacking a bit in confidence. It was put through on goal. Fantastic run, by the way. Beating that offside trap, staying in his half, and then beating the offside line, and then he was put through on goal. For some reason, I'm sure there was a lot going on in his head as to am I dinking the ball over the goalkeeper? Am I trying to run past the goalkeeper to the right? He could have chosen any option and it would still have had a chance to score. But just as you get with a lot of players, not very high on confidence. I remember seeing a lot of decision making like that from Darwin Núñez, in his first 2 seasons at Liverpool, maybe even at the moment, you just can tell when a striker is not really high on confidence, and that's the situation with Eddie Nketiah at the moment. I think he's got just the one goal that he got against QPR in the League Cup since joining Palace. Yes, his work rate always there. He timed this pass to Ismaila Saar well for the third goal. And his general link-up play after he came on was good as well. It was one of those that also had a great game, after coming on. A lot of the substitutes, by the way, affected the game well, Daichi Kamada as well. But maybe Nketiah hasn't done enough because when you look at what Jean-Philippe Mateta offers, when he's in the right form, is dominating defenders, winning aerial duels, running into channels, and it just offers a lot than what Nketiah is doing at the moment. Eddie Nketiah is a different type of striker. When he comes on, it sort of changes the shape of the team. It worked well against Brighton because once that shape was changed by Olivier Glasner, it did, give Palace more of the impetus, and Brighton sort of struggled a bit more, in the game. But is that something that will work every time, or is that a pattern that Olivier Glasner wants to settle on? It doesn't look like at the moment. It would maybe the decision would be easier for him if Mateta, if Nketiah was getting the goals. It would have been really nice if he buried that chance against Brighton, on Sunday. It would have been a great morale booster for him. Would have also left Glasner with some pondering to do. But it's quite obvious that his confidence is lacking a bit at the moment. He would need one or two goals to get in a great form. Also, remember that at the time he joined, it wasn't the entire team wasn't firing, on all cylinders per se. The start of the season wasn't the greatest. The first couple of games he played, yes, they got some great results in the League Cup, but in the league, it just never really happened for Palace in those periods. So if this form persists for the team, if this run of good results continue, and he keeps coming onto the game, affecting the game as he did against Brighton, maybe in a couple of weeks we might be talking about the need for Olivier Glasner to have a think about who is going to be that man who will be leading the attack for Palace.
Yeah, I think you're right. On the day, I think he offered more than Mateta, as much as it pains me to admit as Mateta's biggest fan. Mateta worked really hard all game to make himself an option and an out ball, and it didn't quite sort of house settling noises there. I live in a lighthouse actually, so it's just a foghorn going off. You can hear that in the background. I don't actually know what that is, but it'll go. Yeah, but he basically, I think that he offered more. Mateta worked really hard to be an out ball, and it didn't quite happen for him. partly because the sort of long balls that Palace were trying to play to him were kind of kicked in desperation without much direction. So I don't think he even really was able to get into position to challenge for them often. And yeah, Nketiah's slightly different approach of dropping a bit deeper, taking the ball to feet, being an extra body in the midfield in many ways was really helpful. And he played that role better than I've seen him play that role at any other point. That said, he's not looking confident in front of goal. As you say, he has that chance right at the end that he really should bury. It's a great run for him, as you say, to stay on side and get in that position, but it needs to be buried. It's a classic overthinker's finish to sort of half loft it when he really could just take it round the keeper or stick it round him in any other number of pretty simple ways, I think. And he doesn't offer you. So I think Gianfranco Mateta's the one you trust more when they're in 1-on-1. And considering Palace's biggest problem has been scoring goals for a lot of this season, then you kind of will be a bit worried about dropping him for that reason. And also, I think there's that intangible, softer thing of like Mateta is clearly an emotional leader in the dressing room, and you could see him when he came off. He was a bit like a less annoying and I think more welcomed version of when Ronaldo had to come off injured in the 2016 World Cup. Like, he was off his seat all the time and really trying to G up his teammates, G'ing up the fans, setting a tone of positivity. And I think it's obviously difficult to measure what you'd be losing if you took him out of the team to accommodate Nketiah in that sense. But I think quite a lot. I think Palace still they've had a great run of form, but they need to keep positive through a run of difficult results to kind of maintain it and build on it and not just let it all dissipate. And I think some of the kind of emotional energy of Gianfranco Mateta and the influence in the dressing room is probably quite important there. So that'd be another reason I'd be still squeamish about dropping him. Other than that, I just love the man. And finally, I want to touch on, have you been reading about Fabian Hertzler's rants in the press? He's unhappy about Palace's first goal. In the build-up, Baliba's coming in for a challenge on Eze, and Michael Oliver blocks him sort of by his position, doesn't stop the play. That then gradually leads to, I can't remember if it's the corner or the corner which leads to the corner, which leads to the first goal. It seems quite tangential. I think it's presumably Hertzler's also incensed at the butterfly that flapped its wings in 1982 that triggered the chain of events that led to that happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Wale? What's he doing there?
Well, I honestly don't know what he's on about, to be honest. He had a lot to say and then went on to say, "Oh, we deserve to lose." I'm thinking, just shut up. Like, although I'm also one to acknowledge the fact that, a lot of times after performances like that or after losing the game, emotions are high. There's a camera and a microphone in front of you, and you just say all sorts of things, and maybe after 2-3 days you will probably have a different opinion. If we want to begin to talk about so many times a referee has made a mistake that has led to a goal or has led to a sequence of events that have led to a goal, then there would be so many goals that we will be chalking off the board in a lot of games. I was watching Chelsea against Brentford yesterday, and I was, for some reason, rooting for Brentford to get back in the game, and Marco Correa, ran into, I think it was Vitaly Janelt, and he just touched him and went on the floor, and the referee gave a free kick. And Janelt was so so angered that he couldn't stop talking and ended up getting a yellow card. But I'm sure if referees, I'm sure they do go back and watch games again, and the referee would have looked at that and felt, oh, it's Cucurella split a fast one on me there. But then, uh, particularly about the Brighton Palace situation, maybe it would have been different if someone's passed the ball and it's hit the referee, or the referee stopped an attack from happening or something. Yes, maybe the referee did impede Baleba. Maybe he could have stopped Berchiese, but it wasn't like it immediately led to a goal. There were two corner kicks, before the goal. So usually that is what you say. There was a lot of events after that happened before the goal. So I don't know. There was a lot that could have been done to avoid the goal after Michael Oliver's obvious error, unintentional error. It has to be said. Yes, according to Fabian Ismaila, he acknowledged making an error at the end of the game. Whether he thought it was enough to stop the game to stop play during the game, it was obvious he didn't feel it was enough, and he didn't stop. And a corner kick happened, then another corner kick, then the goal. As I said, I don't know what the Brighton manager is on about, but they're in a terrible run of form. Not so terrible. I think they've gone 4 games now without a victory, and they've lost at home. It was their first loss at home um, over the weekend, so it must have been very angered by the result. Yes, he went on to say, "Oh, the referee made a mistake. I don't know why he didn't stop the game, but we did deserve to lose." I'll just say, shut up and move on. That's what I'll say, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you've touched on it there. Like, pretty sure that the guidance for a ref is if the ball hits him, you should stop the play. If it doesn't, it shouldn't. And that's almost impossible for the ref to give. I see there might be a situation where it's justified, but to stop the play for a player running into them is like, I don't know. You kind of think it could set a precedent in a weird way, like it's about Cucurella running into Yanel, where like you could stop a dangerous counter attack by accidentally running into the ref, and then, you have to stop the play now because he's gone.
Yeah.
So I think they almost can't give them. What I wonder if Herzl is doing is, and he's been successful, if this is his aim, is kind of keeping the headlines away from the team, insulating the likes of Lewis Dunk a bit from the criticism by saying something outlandish that'll get the press attention and shift it onto that. If he has done that deliberately, then it's been successful. But it's a sort of risky strategy because you protect your players, but you end up convincing possibly
Well,
your own fans, chairman, etc., that you're kind of mad with your public persona.
yeah. Well,
So
yeah, maybe that was his plan, but it's only a matter of time before some head of news is asking for a different angle. So
yeah, as you say, he was also quite critical of his players after.
I'm sure that would go away eventually. So
Anyway, we'll wrap up the discussion of the game there, and then I've got the reason I left that question about Hertzler to last is I have a quiz for Wale, which builds on that theme a little bit. So don't go anywhere. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day. So, Wale, building on Fabian Herzler's excuses there, I've put together a quiz for you on some of the maddest Premier League managerial excuses. And just 3 questions. There's nothing really to play for, but hopefully it's a good laugh. You can play along at home and let us know how you've got on yourself Every question is A to D, multiple choice.
Nice.
I'm thinking par for the course is 2 here. I reckon they're gettable. They're gettable questions. So without further ado, I will jump into it with the first one. So Wale, Pep Guardiola was almost left with egg on his face in 2017 as City needed penalties to edge past a Len Championship topping Wolves side in the League Cup. What did Pep highlight as a reason for City's struggles in the game? Was it A, the match balls didn't weigh enough? B, the match balls weighed too much? C, at close to 150 meters above sea level, the Molineux was a higher altitude than City were used to playing at? Or D, he'd only picked Claudio Bravo for the game by accident? Which of those excuses did Pep come out with?
Was it the altitude at the Molineux?
It was not the altitude at the Molineux, right? It was at the match balls didn't weigh enough. Although, of course, it's so high altitude in the Molineux, it's zero gravity, so all balls just sort of float off into distance. But it was at the Etihad this game, so it's a red herring there. Yeah, balls didn't weigh enough. That was it.
Nice.
They have to play with Mateta.
Well, now he's saying he's not good enough now.
Yeah, well, he should get used to the Mateta Championship balls. I think Pep Guardiola, because he's going to have to. Looks like he's going to have to deal with them soon enough. As a second question, Wale, put that defeat behind you. On to the next one. Also at the beginning of the 17-18 season, Slaven Bilic's West Ham team was struggling for form at their new home, the Olympic Stadium. Why did the Big Croat blame West Ham's poor run of form on the new stadium? What was the issue? Was it A, the distance from the pitch to the stands made it difficult to create an intimidating atmosphere? B, the distance from the stadium to the pie and mash shops of East London meant all the fans in the stadium hadn't eaten, making it difficult to create an intimidating atmosphere? C, the colour scheme of the stadium was confusing the players? Or D, the players felt dwarfed by the legacy of Team GB's London 2012 achievements in that very stadium? Which one was it?
It was definitely not Team GB's achievement.
Big Greg Rutherford. Yeah. Greg Rutherford's a difficult name.
Yes, did he say the fans had not eaten well?
He did not. He did not say the fans had not eaten well. But I thought that might be one. I mean, that touches on actually why it was a problem, I think, for West Ham is moving out of the. Was
it the colours? Yeah, did he say the colours were confusing?
It was the colours. Yeah, there was a lot of green around the pitch. I think they kind of covered the running track area and just sort of miscellaneous green tarp, and Bilic felt that it confused the players about the sort of length and distances of the pitch. Presumably confused both teams, I'd say. Less so.
I bet a lot of the players, played with their mates without jerseys, so it's talking nonsense.
Yeah. I think you're right. That is a nonsense example. And finally, off the football pitch, Sir Alex Ferguson, a man of many a creative excuse, was caught driving in the hard shoulder of a motorway in 1999.
Ooh.
What excuse did he give to the police for this illegal manoeuvre? A, he'd just been driving in Europe, so he thought it was the fast lane. B, he desperately needed to go to the toilet and was trying to get there as quickly as possible. C, he desperately needed a new hair dryer. His last one had broken and he needed one to treat his players with at halftime. Or D, he just won the treble despite starting Jesper Blomqvist in the Champions League final, so he thought he was in a dream. Which one of those do you think seems most plausible?
He was just driving in Europe and thought it was the fast lane.
I thought that was a good one, but it wasn't the answer. I was pleased with that.
I thought it was a sensible, man. That was the most sensible answer.
I was happy with that coming up with that as one. But no, it was that he desperately needed a loo. He thought he was at risk of soiling himself, so he had to go into the hard shoulder.
I thought if he got him for one, would just have a go wherever it was.
Not in view of the public. Well, I think that's what we've got time for today. Thank you for joining me and indulging my quiz there, Wale.
That was terrible.
What's your excuse? What's your excuse for the performance?
I don't know. For some reason, I just couldn't hear you well at some point. He just kept
breaking
Just kept breaking up. I don't know, the internet here somehow.
It was a Greg Rutherford stammer that did it all. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Wale.
Cheers, Joe. Cheers, Joe.
Thank you guys for listening. If you've got this far, please give us a 5-star review. Really helps us out. And we will, see you tomorrow, and hopefully again and again for a week of 2 Arsenal fixtures and a lot of associated peril and anxiety for Crystal Palace. We hope you'll join us for it.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.